Even in a losing effort, Bryce Young made another statement today in the Panthers' 30-27 loss. Enough of a statement for Dave Canales to come out and say that he'll absolutely be the team starter next week against Tampa.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here live on YouTube, where I am following every Carolina Panthers game and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. The Carolina Panthers 27, the Kansas City Chiefs 30, and honestly, the score at the end of the day is not the main story out of this Panthers loss as they fall to 3-8. The story, once again, is the play, the improvement, and the confidence that was displayed today by the Panthers starting quarterback Bryce Young, as he had arguably his best game as a Carolina Panther. You look at the game against New Orleans a couple weeks ago where the Panthers won last time here at home. I thought Bryce was terrific in that game. The stat line didn't necessarily suggest that he had played a great game. If you sat here and watched it, you knew that Bryce had taken a step from where he was the week prior when he finally took over the starting spot again on the road in that loss against Denver. The last time out against the Giants wasn't the most overwhelming performance, but still what you needed him to do late in the game was move the chains, keep the Panthers on the field, and run out more of that clock before they gave the ball back to the Giants. And he made a critical throw on a 3rd and 8 to Xavier Legette. He took care of the football. He showed that decisiveness. He showed his ability to be athletic. We were seeing that from Bryce the last couple of weeks, and that all culminated today where we saw Bryce play, again, one of his best games, if not the best game he has played as a Carolina Panther, going 21 of 35, 263 yards, a touchdown, and a 92.9 passer rating. I told y'all earlier in the week that this was going to be one of the biggest games of his career, not just because they were playing the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, but because Bryce had to continue to build on the performances that he had the last couple of weeks, even maintain this job. As Dave Canales made it very clear, he was taking his decision week to week. And while Bryce had made a statement after that Giants game and after that Saints game, he still needed to see Bryce do the things that continue to put them in a position to put him back out there. And what a better opportunity to do that than against a team in Kansas City, where if you're going to get to the Super Bowl, which David Tepper, the Panthers owner, said when the Panthers drafted Bryce Young, he felt like of all the quarterbacks available in that draft class, talking about C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, he felt like Bryce Young gave this team, this franchise, this city, the best opportunity to not just win a Super Bowl, but to win Super Bowls. And the team that you have to face, unfortunately, coming out of the NFC, if you get to the Super Bowl, are the Kansas City Chiefs. And these Chiefs, they came in today at 9-1. They're now 10-1. I'm not very convinced that that is a great football team. They're finding ways to win, which is the mark of a good football team, certainly. I have questions about how far this Chiefs team is truly going to go, even if they have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback who did Mahomes things to win this game. But you need Bryce Young in those games to step up and have the kind of performances that you need to have a quarterback in a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't do it for San Francisco. I don't think Brock Purdy necessarily did it for San Francisco last year. Jalen Hurts thought he was terrific in that game, but still wasn't enough against that guy in Patrick Mahomes. You have to be excellent if you're going to take down Kansas City on the biggest stage. And even if it's a Week 12 game, you still got to be excellent to have an opportunity to win this football game. And I felt like coming into it, knowing the Chiefs have one of the best run defenses in the league. The only way Carolina was going to be competitive is if Bryce Young continued to build on the positive performances he had against New Orleans and against New York, and he played even better, which he did in this game. He had 107 yards passing in the first quarter. Last week, he had 126 yards total in that game against New York. At 177 at the half. He was terrific. I thought he played a great game. And you look at the explosive plays the Panthers had. We talked about this on Friday when looking at the keys to victory. They needed to let Bryce basically not cook, but throw the ball down the field. We saw a 34-yard pass play to Xavier Legette. We saw a 36-yard pass to Adam Thielen where it was more a catch and run and great blocking by Legette on that play. 28 yards to JT Sanders, 21 yards to David Moore, who stepped up in a huge way. 4 different receivers having 20-plus yard receptions. The only time that it happened for Kansas City was last week in Buffalo. Happens again today in Charlotte as Legette, Thielen, Sanders, Moore all make critical plays in this game with Bryce Young being able to get the explosive element that Dave Canales said that they were looking for in the pass game. And we had the conversation about a week and a half ago about would they possibly go back to Andy Dalton, meaning would Dave Canales go back to him when looking at just how they had performed in the pass game this season? This is only the 5th time this year the Panthers have had over 200 yards passing by a single quarterback. The other times it was once for Bryce against Denver when he first came back, most of that being in garbage time. Then Andy Dalton did it in the game against Cincinnati, the game against Las Vegas. And I forget what the other matchup, I think it would have been the Falcons game as well. Like, this has not been a great pass offense this season. We have not seen these explosive chunk plays, but to do that against that team, that defense, that coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo, that if you can't play, he's going to expose you. And Bryce Young did not get exposed at all today. If anything, he showed that he absolutely can play and that maybe he should have been benched in the first place. And maybe I was premature to say, it's done for Bryce Young in Carolina, just going off of the history of when you typically get benched, you don't get another opportunity. And when we listen to all the things that Dave Canales had to say about Bryce, when he was asked about him, anytime to say a positive thing, wouldn't do it. Said it was about Andy Dalton. It was about the guys who are out there. He was focused on Andy. Would not say Bryce Young's name when asked specifically about him. Kind of hard not to sit here and think that he's not going to get another opportunity. But based off how he played against New Orleans, based off how he played against the Giants, based off of how he played against the Kansas City Chiefs, Dave Canales has no other choice than to stick with Bryce Young for the rest of the season. I don't care if he puts up a stinker like he did in week 1 and week 2 against New Orleans and the Chargers next week against Tampa. He's your quarterback the following week on the road in Philadelphia. He's your quarterback the rest of the way, and then we can evaluate it past this season in 2025 and beyond. And if this is what we're going to get, then I feel pretty confident that he's going to be the quarterback again in 2025. And hell, maybe he's going to be the quarterback again in 2026. We are seeing the kind of progression that we all hope to see from Bryce Young once Dave Canales was hired to come to Carolina, after what we saw we did with Geno Smith, him getting paid in Seattle, what we saw what Baker Mayfield did, him getting paid in Tampa and still playing really good football this season, even in adverse situations where he's missing Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Dave Canales did a great job with those guys. He was dubbed this quarterback whisperer, and after 2 weeks, he gave up on this situation. Or was he making the right decision for the team and for Bryce Young to sit him, then bring him back when it made sense, even though the only reason Bryce Young was even out there against Denver and out there against New Orleans is because, well, Andy Dalton got in a car accident, and I can't help but wonder where we would be right now had that not happened. And thank God that Andy, his wife, kids, and dog were fine, but also thank God that we actually get to see Bryce Young get another opportunity at the Panthers, who gave up the world to get him, aren't sitting here with a quarterback on the bench for a 37-year-old quarterback who did not have a future here in Carolina at all. And asked after the game about Bryce, Dave Canales said, I don't have to make any statements. He's making it himself. And then when asked, should we expect to see Bryce Young as Panther starting quarterback next week against Tampa, he said, absolutely. Bryce Young is the Panther starting quarterback next week, the week after that, for the rest of 2024. And then once we get to January, we can talk about 2025 and where the Panthers go from here. But right now, he's their guy. he gives him the best opportunity to win, and he's looking very confident in playing the kind of football that we all were hoping he would play when the Panthers drafted him #1 overall about 18 months ago. And it's not just that, it's the leadership. After the game, multiple players brought it up to us that Bryce had a speech in the locker room. And Robert Hunt, basically, he wouldn't tell us necessarily the details, but said it's Bryce saying that this is who we want to be. We want to be this kind of team that can go up against that kind of franchise and be in these games. But, of course, you want to get on top and win those games. We don't want to do moral victories here in Carolina. We've had to do those a couple times the last couple of years. And really the moral victories is just this team looking competent. And they looked more than competent in this loss, which felt like a win, but still is a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs here on Sunday. And to me, it feels a lot like Green Bay last year, but it's different. It's different because it feels real when looking at Bryce. Last year, you were really hoping that, okay, that was outstanding. This is what we want to see. But you also think about it. All right, Packers, good football team, but that's a terrible defense with a coordinator who was a dead man walking, especially after what he gave up that day to a Panthers offense that had not been good all season long. You can look at it and say that's based on the opponent. Today, you can't do that. The opponent, the Kansas City Chiefs, were one of the best defenses in the league. And the Panthers went out there and put up 27 points on them, and they moved the ball up and down the field pretty much all day long. We'll talk about the red zone struggles, which really led to the loss here today on Sunday. But Carolina got what they wanted for the most part. Couldn't really run the ball, but in the pass game, they got it done. And that says a lot about Bryce and about where this passing offense, this is offense overall, can go moving forward through the last 6 games of this regular season in 2024. And you also look at how he played against the Giants and how he played against the Saints. This is now 3 straight games Bryce Young has played winning football. Now, they didn't win the game, understand, but he's played to the standard that they're trying to set here in Carolina. He wasn't doing that last year. He didn't have back-to-back performances heading into that Packers game that had you really believing that he's turning a corner. This is different. And now he's got to do it again next week. We don't want to see regression. Got to continue to move forward and continue to grow in confidence, which he has, and everyone around him can see it. This, to me, feels different than last year against Green Bay, which up until this game, I felt like was the best performance. But now adding in the opponent, the stage, even if it's week 12, and what he's been doing in the past, this to me is the best game that Bryce Young has played as a Carolina Panther. And absolutely, as Dave Canales said, we will see him out there next Sunday against Tampa as a Carolina Panther starting quarterback. And finally, Dave gets it right and just answers the damn question and says, yeah, we're sticking with the guy who we gave the world for and who they brought me in to fix. Bryce Young is your quarterback, at least the next 6 games, maybe. Quite maybe again in 2025. I'm going to talk about why the Panthers lost this game, as, of course, a lot of positives to take. You feel good because Bryce looks good, and if your quarterback isn't playing well, there's really no hope in your franchise. But there feels like hope now based off of this performance in the last couple of weeks, but they still lost. In the red zone, 3rd down, those are 2 areas that Dave Canales brought up after the game to why the Panthers not win. We'll look at that, and also we'll get a couple more things from this Panthers 30-27 loss to the 2-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs here at Bank of America Stadium. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses. Here are just a few of the courses available right now. Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution. Introduction to free market economics, the great American story, a land of hope, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. All of the Hillsdale courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/locked-on. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and, of course, here in North Carolina. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDON NFL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Carolina Panthers fall at home 30-27 against the Kansas City Chiefs, dropping to 3-8 on the season. But a lot of belief now in what this team can do over the final 6 weeks of the year based off of how Bryce Young played. Even defensively, they had their moments that they were able to get out the field late in this game, got 5 sacks, did not expect that to happen at all. Where did this Panthers pass rush come from? Looking at the division, yeah, they lose. Tampa gets a game back, it's the win. Maybe it's open. I told y'all this week that for me to really buy in, I need to see a win against the Chiefs or win against the Eagles. Kind of hard not to kind of buy into this, even though sitting at 3-8, margin for error is very slim. I think 8-9 could be enough to win the division. 9-8, certainly I would think that would be good enough to win the division, but we don't have to have those conversations yet. Still have plenty of things left to do the last couple of weeks for the Panthers that they're really going to be in that conversation. We're going to have that talk here on the show. And this is a game, as I told you on Friday, I was giving the Panthers a chance. I wasn't going to say they're going to win, but I was giving them a chance. I was talking to someone over at my gym. I'm not gonna name drop, but they were like, "All right, what do you think about the game on Sunday?" And I was like, "Well, I think they got a chance." They're like, "Don't say anything crazy." He's like, "No, Kansas City's not been good this. I guess they're good. Yes, they're good, but they haven't been dominant like you would think a team that was 9-0 going to last week was. They have not been that good. They've gotten away with it, and they're 10-1. They're sitting here at the top of the AFC. Totally understand that. Again, I'm going to stand with what I said on Locked On NFL last Monday when talking to my guy Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jags. If they play the Lions today, they would get their ass whooped because the Lions are a far better team than Kansas City. The only difference is the Lions don't have Patrick Mahomes, and that's really been the only difference. And a lot of those Super Bowls the Chiefs have won. And I really think that they probably wouldn't have won those games. I mean, obviously they don't win those without Patrick Mahomes, but they got lucky to win some of those games. And this team does not look convincing. Last year's team didn't look convincing, but they came in this game at plus 49 point differential. That was the 6th highest in the AFC. And they were behind Denver and Los Angeles in their own division. They ranked 10th in the NFL in point differential. Now, the Panthers were far be it the worst in the NFL, but they have been getting better. Yeah, they play the Giants, who now no longer have Daniel Jones. That's not a good football team. I understand. The Saints also not really a great football team, even though since the Panthers beat them, I don't know if the Saints have played today, if they won or not, but they were 2-0 heading into this week with Rizzi as their head coach. Like, yeah, not great teams, but still, this team was getting better. It was very clear to anyone who's been watching them that they've been getting better, they've been getting healthier, and they were going to have a chance to be competitive in a lot of these games throughout the rest of the season, including the one that we just watched today. And Robert Hunt said to us in the locker room that no one batted an eye heading into this week. And Chuba Hubbard also came out and said that no one was surprised. And obviously, you're going to expect those guys to say that kind of stuff because they're not going into the game thinking, oh, we can't win. But you have to think, too, they are human. And there are guys in the past who admitted, yeah, we didn't think we were going to win that game. This team expected it, and this team got a taste of winning, like Robert Hunt said. They started to like that, and they felt confident heading in this game, and they went toe-to-toe with Kansas City. Kansas City Chiefs team who's been letting a lot of people go toe-to-toe with them, and this is the NFL. When you see those 10.5-point lines, that's disrespectful, but also taking account of what Vegas thinks of this team. They need to reevaluate moving forward. This is not a team that should be a double-digit underdog to anybody the rest of the way, based off of the recent performances and the growth of their quarterback. But this is one that they let slip, if we're being honest. That's a game they could have won. Now, when they go down the field where Bryce makes some excellent throws, he had a great throw to Leggett that he dropped. That's just a brutal drop. Xavier's got to figure that out as far as catching the football. But the throw to Adam Thielen, that gets the DPI, be able to run it in there, get that 2-point conversion. Chuba Hubbard, he only got 2 carries for 4 yards in the first half, which was insane that was the case. But that also points to Kansas City was going to take that away. I would think they would have tried to run it more. There was 3 carries for 7 yards for the running backs. Jonathan Brooks making his debut. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on in this game. But this is a game that they absolutely could have won. And when 1:46 is left on the clock and the Chiefs have all 3 timeouts, I feel like we all knew where this was going. Would the Panthers defense really get a 3rd stop in a row? They had him on 3rd and 3. Mahomes is able to hit. Who was it? Duke Hopkins, whatever you want to call him, over the middle on a slant route, and they convert. And then he has the run down the sideline where I don't know what Dane Jackson was doing. I don't really know what Dane Jackson was doing at all today, as he could not tackle, gave that one touchdown to Noah Gray, had a terrible game. That was not great to see. And if he's going to play like that, go ahead and just put in Shaw Smith-Wade the rest of the way, since he has certainly a future here in Carolina the next couple of years. But the reason why they lost this game comes down to two different areas. And the first one that Dave Canales brought up after the game was the red zone. He said they had missed opportunities. We've heard that one before. Ron Rivera used to always say missed opportunities. Dave Canales came out and said today, missed opportunities. Looking in the first half in particular, Carolina was 0 for 3 in the red zone, but Kansas City was only 1 for 3 in the red zone. It wasn't like the Chiefs were dominating in that area. Now, they had that one chunk play that was for a touchdown, and their drives in the first half were touchdown, field goal, touchdown. The Panthers could not get them off the field. And overall, at the end of the day, Carolina finished 2 for 6 in the red zone. Kansas City only finished 2 for 5. That extra red zone possession that Carolina had, if that's a touchdown instead of field goal, well, we know they win this game. And that is why they just fell short today. KC, great defense, as we talked about. Panthers were able to move the ball really up and down the field on them throughout this game, and especially in the first half. And, of course, in the second half as well. They just got to the red zone and weren't able to capitalize. And Dave Canales said, we got to finish. And you look at one of those drives where JT Sanders, we'll talk more about him, as he went out with a neck injury, was carted off. Scary seeing it at Bank of America Stadium. A lot better than what, of course, it looked like. I think a lot of those times when that happens, it's more precautionary than actually being something serious, which is great for him. Prayers are out to him as well. Everybody think about him as he hopefully can come back soon, but we'll see what his health status is going to be. I will find out more about that on Monday, but I do have an update here momentarily from Dave Canales when we talked to him after the game in that press conference. But you look at that drive, JT Sanders, again, goes up, high points the ball, brings it down. He gets, I think, 11-yard reception where that's where he got hurt, right around the 10-yard line. And then you're looking at your options there. Thielen's back. You got Tommy Trimble out there, where there's one ball where it looked like he could have caught it. David Moore, who had a really good game, they just didn't have that red zone threat. Maybe Leggett, you would hope he's had a couple of those red zone touchdowns, really been when they've been able to isolate him on one side and then run a slant route. Weren't able to do that against Kansas City today. I don't think the Chiefs are going to allow them to set up in that kind of formation and get that touchdown. So not having Sanders, who's shown as far as all the receivers this year in Carolina, especially the young ones, he's the one who's going to go up there and get it. Not having him at the end of that drive, that really hurt Carolina, watching it carted off, but then not having that option, those 3 plays that led to a field goal. So that, I think, was one where maybe they capitalize and score a touchdown opposed to kicking a field goal if they're not in that situation. But they got to finish. Didn't finish those drives. Kind of goes back to the Cincinnati game earlier in the year. Didn't finish that opening drive, which that should have been a touchdown. Didn't be able to convert that turnover into a touchdown later on in that game. Had some bad drops. Those just the thin margins that have you as a 3-8 team and potentially a team that's sitting here at 5-6 instead, had they been able to capitalize that Sunday against Cincinnati and then today against Kansas City. So that's unfortunate, but still, they got down there 6 times. I don't know how many opportunities the Panthers have had this year where they've had 6 red zone opportunities in a game. I don't, this has to be season high in my opinion. I have to go back and look at it, but off the top of my head right now, I don't think they've done that many times in a game so far this season. The other thing Dave Canales brought up was the third down defense. The Chiefs did not punt in this game until there was 7:01 left. And that's another problem. Like, if you don't get off the field and you're not converting your possessions into touchdowns in the red zone, it's going to be very tough to win. And a lot of credit to this team to even be in a position to have the game tied with 1:46 left when the Chiefs didn't punt until 7:01 left in the game. The Chiefs went touchdown, field goal, touchdown to start this game, and then had to punt. And a big part of the reason why they ended up punting, one of those drives, they just completely imploded and had a bunch of penalties that backed them up, and they had to punt. And one of those also was a sack. J.C. Horn got his first sack of his career in this game, sacking Patrick Mahomes on what I believe was like 3rd and 20 at that point in time. And then the next drive, there was 2 sacks on it. I mean, DJ Wooden had a sack today, 2 times, 2 sacks in 2 games so far. Jadeveon Clowney had his 2nd sack of the season. Deshaun Williams was in there on a sack. So they had 2 sacks on one drive, one by J.C. Horn. So 3 sacks on those 2 back-to-back punt drives that they forced for Kansas City. And that's why having a pass rush is so important. And a lot of credit to see this team, the 2 guys that they really were leaning on this year to be those edge rushers, to get that pressure. Clowney did it a couple times, got a sack. One of them got a sack today, and then other guys helped out. So 5 sacks. Did not see that one coming against this Kansas City Chiefs offense on Sunday as they were able to do that and force those punts. But they needed one more stop. And that's why it's just so difficult. And it's the whole Tom Brady Patriots deal, as we saw back in the past. It's just you left too much time. And you're not going to sit here and delay when you have to get a 2-point conversion, as we all know. Like, they don't get it. They're going to do an onside in the way that the NFL has changed the onside kick rules. It's impossible to get at this point in time. So you couldn't really run down the clock. You needed to go out there, try to score, get a 2-point conversion, and then bow up defensively and get a stop. But they didn't do it. They got them in critical points in the game late there in the fourth quarter to give the offense a chance to come back to tie the game. But when they needed it most, weren't able to do it. Chiefs were 8 of 13 on third down. They're 1-1 on fourth down. So anytime you let a team go 9 for 14 on third and fourth down, you're going to have a tough time winning. But again, slim margins, not really one I'm going to beat this team up on. I still think they're getting better defensively. They did have some missed tackles today, but I think this team is getting better. We've seen it over the last couple of weeks, not just with Bryce, but also with the receivers. And we saw it today as well, as they stood up pass rush wise, which has been a problem, and some positives you can take away from this game defensively, as they're able to get some of those stops late in the game, as they're able to tie the game before Kansas City went down and scored on I think it was a 31-yard field goal. I don't even remember what it was. Either way, tough loss to Carolina, a game that they really let slip away against a team that they certainly could have beat. I don't know if I'm not going to say they're better than Kansas City, but today they were good enough, I thought, in my opinion, to be right there to have a chance to win this game. JT Sanders, carted off, scary moment at Bank of America Stadium. Fortunately, not as significant, it sounds like, as it all looked at the time. Talk about that. Some shout-outs to some guys who played well. Talk about Jonathan Brooks, his return, and, is this a turning point for the Carolina Panthers under Dave Canales? Talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I'm guessing this week, when you're placing your bets, you're going to see the Panthers as not 10.5-point underdogs, might be like 4.5-point underdogs when they face Tampa Bay right back here at Bank of America Stadium. 4:00 game next week. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, back here on Locked on Panthers, sitting inside Bank of America Stadium. I'm actually in the Panthers radio booth, so thank you to the Panthers PR staff for finding me a spot to do the pod. I typically have done it at home. Now, Bleacher Report, a lot of times they pay me to do live streams immediately after the game, to where I'm basically doing the same show twice, even though there's more interaction. I know there's a chat going on here. Hope you guys are all civil and excited in the chat. But I don't look at the chat during the live stream. But over on Bleacher Report, I typically do. So I typically don't come to the games because of that. But maybe moving forward, we'll see. Next year, possibly I'll come to more games. It's nice to be inside. I haven't covered a Panthers game like actually as part of the media here inside Bank of America Stadium since 2019 when I was back at WFNZ. The last couple of years, just been easier to do it at home. Got my own setup there. Can pause TV, all that. But it was good to be here and good to be in the locker room. Maybe it's going to be something I do moving forward in the next couple of years. But sitting up here looking down at the throwback font. Now, one thing someone brought up to me earlier this week, if you recall, if you've been around for a while, there was never the logo on the field until David Tepper came, so the shield would be there. But they did get the logo right. They did have the old school looking Panther logo, which you can tell is slightly different to what they have now. That was one thing that if you want to be like a stickler of, oh, this is not a true throwback, like they didn't have the shield, which fine. They don't need to have the shield at midfield. But cool to have this game with that field. And yeah, there are a lot of Chiefs fans in here. That's not really surprising to anyone at this point in time. And Chuba Hubbard was asked about it. He's like, yeah, I don't like it, but we got to give our fans a reason to come out here and support us. And I think today they gave him a reason to think that there'll be reasons in the future to come out and support this team. But JT Sanders, scary moment right before halftime, got a catch, went out of bounds, fell right on his head. And you looked at his neck just compressed, and it was a scary scene. He tried to get up and immediately was down. Panthers staff went out there to check on him. saw the cart come out, the backboard come out. He was taken to a local hospital, but after the game, Dave Canales let us know that he was discharged, that he's back at the facility, going under more evaluation, and he'll have more of an update, I'm sure, for us either tomorrow on Monday or today if you're listening to the show on Monday, or on Wednesday when he's back out there again speaking to the media. So that's good to see that it wasn't significant. And in this game, look at the stats that I got over here. Where are they at? Sanders had 3 receptions for 49 yards. He was the leading receiver for the Panthers in that first half, and he's continued to grow in a season that has really been lost for Ian Thomas, which I know you guys don't care. But for Tommy Trimble as well, due to injury, this guy's been a bright spot. Really struggled early on, and we've had conversations about how tight end can be a tough position to transition to in the NFL, one of the toughest, like quarterback. He's really played his ass off the last couple of weeks, and really is a delightful guy to talk to. Great spot that the Panthers are in with him. Coker didn't play in this game. He had a quad injury. Adam Thielen coming back. But to have Coker that we get, have Sanders, who not afraid to go up and get it, to have those guys be a part of that receiving trio moving forward at tight end, at wide receiver. And you have to add some more talent there as well. I think you got to get another receiver. Certainly when Thielen departs Carolina, whether it's this offseason or offseason afterwards, you got a good foundation with those 3 receivers and Leggett and Sanders and Coker. So JT Sanders back out of the hospital. I think he's in the building right now as I'm recording this at 6:17 Eastern time here in Charlotte Bank of America Stadium. A couple shout outs. David Moore. This is a dude, like, when the Panthers signed him, I wondered, would he make the team? What kind of impact would he actually be able to have when you looked at, well, they have Deontay Johnson, who they want to be their number one. Adam Thielen's coming back off a 1,000-yard receiving season. Mingo is still here. Leggett was going to play a role. Like, what role was David Moore truly going to play? And since since Deontay Johnson's no longer here. I don't know. Maybe I called him Thompson early. Deontay's no longer here. Adam Thielen's been out, missed 8 weeks until coming back here. 7 games have been out the last 8 weeks, injured with that hamstring. David Moore stepped up. And today, when you saw Sanders go out, you don't have Coker, stepped up once again, 6 receptions, 81 yards, touchdown, including 3 receptions for 28 yards and a touchdown on that drive to start the second half, where made an excellent catch. And, a couple times he's over the middle. And Bryce, that's one of the things about Bryce, the way he's really grown. He stepped back. He's just throwing it in there, throwing some darts. That's not really worried about waiting for the guy to get open, throw the anticipation kind of throws. He had 1-2 Bryce had on a 3rd down where he's getting the rush, and he finds David Moore for, I think, like 12 yards on a throw where he's got it right in his face, and just a beautiful throw to David Moore, who played a really good game, and a guy I feel like you can kind of lean on moving forward the rest of the season, as he was in Seattle with Dave Canales and a lot of these guys on this staff. He was briefly there in Tampa last year. We saw Devin Tompkins also part of the game plan. He was in Tampa last year with Canales. Really positive development. This is the best we've seen David Moore since he was in Seattle back in 2020. When he came to Carolina in 2021, we thought maybe it's going to be their number 3 receiver. That never materialized. We're now seeing it as he was that today, probably his best game since being a Seattle Seahawk 4 years ago. Adam Thielen made his return, had 3 receptions for 57 yards, including that PI that set up the game-tying touchdown by Chuba Hubbard, including the extra point. Xavier Leggett, 4 receptions for 56 yards, had that bad drop on the final drive. Not going to sit here and dwell on it. We have seen him have some tough drops. We've also seen him make some pretty good plays so far this season. Just something he's got to work on. And I'm sure he's going to be on the jugs machine working on it. Chuba had some bad drops in this game as well. And he's a guy who's always working on the jugs machine. And we know how far he's come along as far as a pass catcher out of the backfield during his tenure here in Carolina. So that the receiving core overall played solid. Jonathan Brooks, didn't see him until the 3rd drive of the game today. He had his first carry, went for 3 yards, had 2 carries for 7 yards. Had talked about expectations with Mike Kay of the Charlotte Observer last week for Jonathan Brooks and what role he would play. And he felt like he was going to play the Miles Sanders role. We saw that today. Play the Miles Sanders role. Didn't really see him that much. I don't know if I paid close enough attention on some of those those obvious passing situations. But 2 carries, 7 yards. Can take some time. The whole smash and dash 2.0, I really feel like we're going to have to wait till next year. I'm sorry. That's just probably the reality where the situation is. Chuba was proud of him. Kind of felt like a big brother. That's what he said, to see him out there in this situation after missing all that time with the ACL. And this guy was not out there at all for OTAs, for training camp. This is the first time he's played. It's week 12 of an NFL season. it's going to take him some time to really get going. And I think we probably need to be patient and wait till next year for that impact to happen with him and Chuba in the backfield. But lastly, as we close out things here, as Panthers fall 30-27 at home, now 3-8, was still an opportunity, still things to play with. Dave Canales said it. What he talked about after this game, not really saying moral victories, but he said, we're becoming us. We're becoming the style of football that we want to play. And you can't sit here and argue against that. When you look at how Bryce has progressed, the receivers, the offensive line, I think has been terrific all year long, even with some of the injuries that they've sustained, like Austin Corbett being out for the rest of the year, Milton missing a couple games. Ike Ekwonu came back, and he had some rough penalties in today's game, which we've kind of become accustomed to, the Panthers having an ill-timed false start that causes them to settle for a field goal, which is part of their red zone issues. Got to stop doing that. Some things got to clean up. Overall, we have seen them take positive steps with the run game, and it just came down to, would the pass game come along? Would your quarterback come along? And we saw that today against one of the best teams, one of the best defenses for sure in the NFL. Defensively, the pass rush, the best it's been so far this season. Against the run, Kansas City only ran for, what did they run for? Looking at it, 100. Well, they ran for 165 yards. Kareem Hunt, 16 and 68, 4.3 yards average. I mean, Mahomes had the scrambles. I mean, really, if you take away the Mahomes scrambles, it's not like Kansas City ran it down their throat. And the Panthers have still been giving up 100 yards rushing every single freaking week, but they've been better. It hasn't been like they're getting gashed. I think it's overall, when looking at the 6.3 yards per attempt, that's not great, obviously. But we watched the game. It didn't look that bad. This is not a team that was just getting completely gashed in the run game. There's some short yardage situations where they weren't able to get the stops, and that goes back to what Dave Canales was saying about not being able to get off the field defensively on third down. Is again, they were 8 of 13. The Chiefs were on third down, but we're seeing the progress. JC had a couple bad penalties. Some of them were some obvious holds, and he was not happy about it. Had one PI, so getting penalized 4 times. Can't have that from your best player on defense right now. But overall, Jewell thought he played well. Wallace makes a couple plays. This is a team that's finding out who they are. Now there's only 6 games left. You hate that they're in a 3-8 hole. They play in the NFC South, and crazier things have happened. We have seen a Panthers team, granted, a different Panthers team, be sitting there at, what were they, 3-8-1, and then come back and win 4 straight games, make the playoffs, win a divisional round game. They had Cam, get it, had Luke, had a lot of dudes who were going to be up there across from the way I'm at with their names in the Hall of Honor, Ring of Honor, where the hell they call it over here. But they're getting better, and this is a positive step in the right direction. Still not a good team. Let's not get it twisted, but they're getting better. And these are all things that we had talked about last week, heading to the bye week, and things that we were hoping to see from this Panthers team in the final 7 games. We saw it in this game. Let's see what we see next week against Tampa, against Philly, and the rest of the way here in 2024. But it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe, follow the show for free here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And I want to shout out over 10,000 subscribers. Been meaning to say this. Thank you to everybody who supported it. Ran into somebody on the way into the stadium today who want to say hello, take a photo. So really appreciate anybody who comes up to me and who talks about supporting the show. Whether you like it or don't, I appreciate everybody who watches and supports me here on Locked On Panthers and gives me the ability to go overseas to Munich. You guys didn't listen, didn't watch, wouldn't have the change in my pocket to do stuff like that. So really thankful for all of that. Again, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council. I'm also on Blue Sky at Julian Council. Been trying to copy my tweets, put them over there. I had someone ask me to do that, but I'm far more active on Twitter. So either at me or DM me to get questions for the weekly Wednesday mailbag. Go ahead and get those in right now. I'm going to record that typically on Tuesdays around 5 o'clock. So get those questions in prior to then over at Julian Council on Twitter. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll be back with you on Tuesday talking about our Keys of Victory review, what Dave Canales had to say after reviewing the film, and looking at where the Panthers are headed as they face the Bucs next Sunday here in Uptown Charlotte.